So the problem that I am trying to face is the alternative to traditional sources of research funding. So at the moment, Australian governments only invest 1.79% of total GDP on research and development, which is less than the global average of 2.56, I believe. And for a lot of people, especially scientists who are prototyping their new innovations, it's really hard to get funding when they don't have a proof of concept. So a lot of biomedical scientists in this space are turning to crowdfunding to fund early stage parts of their innovations. And this has been a newer area of research, the crowdfunding phenomenon for research and innovations, but it's a space that is gaining a lot more attention, especially from younger researchers, scientists, students, etc. But despite this increased attention, there is a failure rate that's quite high for projects in general of 62.56%. And in medical innovations and research, it's been told to sit around 52%. So half of the innovations that go on these platforms actually don't reach their funding goals, whether or not those funding goals are too ambitious or whether or not their projects just aren't reaching people in the right way. That is what I'm sort of hoping to research in my study. So what is crowdfunding? The basic concept of crowdfunding is that it connects someone from the internet to a range of different investors through a certain platform. There are a lot of stakeholders who are involved in the crowdfunding ecosystem. So on the right here, I have attached the Spanish creative industries crowdfunding ecosystem model. So they take a ecosystem approach where they break up the different stakeholders involved into micro, meso, and macro stakeholders. So beyond the basic relationship between the investor and the creator, there are also a lot of other people who are helping on either side to give money to the project. So the place I started before I did my research was what is already there, what determines the success of a crowdfunding campaign. And from my research, I put all of these determinants into 4 different categories, those being investor motivations and behavior, project and campaign design, an entrepreneur's characteristics, and market-related factors. What I'd found in a lot of studies is that they don't look at multiple categories when they're seeing the determinants of crowdfunding investment. So my research hopes to take a few of the determinants that have been identified in previous research and combine them to see if I can get a better understanding of why some projects will fail and some will be more successful. So the case study that I'm using for my project is a biomedical innovation by a scientist named Dietmar Hupmacher, and he works at IBI over in Kelvin Grove. So the project he's working on is called EASYSURGERY. It's a microsuture and surgical training device, and he's patented this technology as well as the tissue analogs. So you can 3D print the tissue analogs to replicate any part of the human body. So a lot of medical students can test these different tissue analogs and the microsuturing techniques without actually having to use live material. So while this is a fantastic innovation, their Indiegogo campaign raised $800 out of the requested $47,000, which is 1% of their total funding goal. So what I did initially was analyze their campaign and see what they had on the page and what they could do to improve. So the driving theory that I pulled to put this study together, which brings in the behavioral economics, are behavioral biases, risk attitudes, which also comes from economics and BE theory, and then more from marketing, I'm looking at customer value and the communication of that value through various message appeal theories that I'm going to be using as well. So what I'm hoping to do is understand a range of behavioral biases that investors may experience for these innovations, test their level of risk attitude, and see what communication strategies might actually help them to invest in the project. So what do we know and what do we want to know? So the gaps that I found in my literature review that few studies have addressed the effect of multiple behavioral biases on risk attitudes and investing in crowdfunded biomedical innovations. And there's no investigation into the effect of a customer value proposition, which is the message appeals to reduce these risk attitudes and increase investment in crowdfunded biomedical innovations. So my overarching question is, How do customer value proposition and their message appeals interact with risk attitudes and behavioral biases to increase the success of reward-based crowdfunding campaigns for biomedical innovations? Sure does read better than it sounds. So my proposed theoretical model that I've had some feedback since creating this is to aggregate behavioral biases, but now that I've spoken to a few behavioral economists who I have not spoken to previously, they said that's not something that normally happens. So what I'm going to do is find instruments and different measures for the behavioral biases that I've identified, and that will be done in a survey with the participants of the study. And from there, I'll then be conducting an experiment. So in the experiment, there will be 3 different versions of the same campaign using a framework based on Aristotle's message appeals. So that is logos, ethos, and pathos. So the main focus of the message appeal will come from one of those 3 approaches. And what I will do is see if a person is suffering from a higher risk attitude and a more loss averse, whether one of these message appeals will be more appropriate than the other. It's definitely still in a tinkering stage and a pre-ethics point, so I'm sure this will look completely different by the time it actually happens, but this is the approach I'm hoping to test for my research. So yeah, I've sort of just gone through that there. I'm hoping to do this all online with the COVID environment and recruit students from a bunch of medical lists, so hopefully from Dietmar's contacts and my own personal contacts, and yeah, build it from there. So if I do end up speaking to any of you at the conference lunches, it would be great to have some input and feedback on how to put that together. And that is sort of where I'm at the moment. So I think I am a little bit earlier than I need to be, but yeah, thank you so much.